Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 67 of the All Dolphins podcast. And this one has to be in honor, tribute, as Omar is shaking his head, trying to see Bob Kuechenberg, member of the 72 perfect season. I don't know if he still holds a record for most games played by a Dolphins player. 9-time finalist, I believe it is, for the Hall of Fame. Somehow still hasn't gotten in there. He was among the senior candidates this year, did not make it to the semifinalist cut. I'm still thinking at some point he's going to get into the Hall of Fame. He was a very, very, very good offensive lineman who played several different spots. If I'm going to come up with a reason why he's not in the Hall of Fame yet, is because that 72 Dolphin team already has two offensive linemen in the Hall of Fame with Larry Little and Jim Lang. So that's my little history lesson there. That's long before you were born, Omar.
Yeah, no. You could name every member of the 72 team, and I couldn't tell you what their number was because I've never seen it. I actually had that conversation with one of the safeties from the 72 team. He's like, we were on a flight to London. It happened to be a bazillion Dolphins players and former players and fans on it. And he was sitting behind me. Can't remember his name. I always say the wrong one. There are two.
It was probably Dick Anderson would be my guess.
Yeah, probably. And he was like, "You never seen me play?" And I'm like, "Bro, I was born in '77. I wasn't alive. Sorry."
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, this is probably a good time for me to throw in like part of the reason why I know so much in terms of Dolphin history with names and numbers and all that.
Because you're old.
Wow. Ouch.
Ouch. I'm old too. Well, I'm old too. I no longer get to play the young card.
Okay. Yeah, that too. Plus, I worked at either copy editing or contributing as a writer on books dealing with the Dolphin history several times. So when I was working with Curtis Publishing, the former publishers of Dolphin Digest, we did a book on the 25th anniversary. I did copy editing for a book on the 50th anniversary. So that's kind of part of where the whole knowledge comes from.
I am of, and I know this is offensive to all of the 72 crowd. I used to say this to Harvey Green, the late Jason Jenkins. I used to say, stop rubbing the 72 Dolphins in our face. Stop. It was such a great accomplishment. I don't need to see them every year. I really don't. You're like,
that's
how dare you?
Well, no, that's fair. I mean, correct. That's fair. Again, except it is something that's never been done or been done since, not going through an entire season and playoffs without losing a game. So there's
almost done, but it wasn't accomplished.
Correct. Last year was the 50th anniversary. And this year, if we're going to get technical, it's the 50th anniversary of the repeat Super Bowl champions of 73, who, and this may not be very popular everywhere, might actually have been a better team than 72. But this is where people say, well, they lost 2 games. They also faced a much tougher schedule, but I don't want to digress.
And everybody coming after them as champions.
Correct. And I think there have been some players, I think, on that team who actually have said that themselves, that the 73 team actually was better than 72 team. And the 72, last point on this before we move on to 2023 Dolphins, is the 73 Dolphins won their playoff games by 18, 17, and 17. The 72 Dolphins won their playoff games by 6, 4, and 7. So take that for what it's worth. Okay, the big news of the day today, Wednesday, September 6th, is the first injury report of the season, because now teams don't have a choice. They have to produce an injury report that they file with the league, which includes, at this point, just practice participation and then nature of the injuries. And this is where we found out, which I found rather troubling, that Terron Armstead is not only dealing with a lower leg injury, he's listed with his injury as back/ankle/knee.
Okay. Not surprising on the knee and the ankle. We saw the ankle injury. We knew he had the knee scoped. Okay. Probably going to have treatment on that every single day of the next couple of months. That's what happens when you're old. I'm sure you do treatment on something at this point. Now the back, okay, I'll give you that. Surprise, surprise. There's a back injury. But as you chronicled in an alldolphins.com piece, and to my amazement, and I did not know this, and I still am in disbelief on this, Terron Armstead only participated in how many practices last season without limitations?
Full practices, the exact number is 1. It was the Friday before the season opener against New England. That was it. That's crazy.
He played through a toe injury that a lot of people thought should have and would have and could have shut down his season. So props to him for making it happen. I wonder if he was walking around with a boot for an entire year. I wasn't in the locker room. I did not cover the team, so I do not know. But that sounds pretty amazing. Toes are bad injuries. I've seen that in plenty of careers, and this goes back to my college days. Seeing great players become average players and not get drafted because of a toe injury. So those are
a long time ago. If it goes back to your college days, that's a long time ago. My turn to take a shot on the age.
Yeah, you're right, man. Back when I covered Florida State Seminoles under Bobby Bowden, and Peter Warwick was a man who could stop on a dime and give you some 9 cents change. Yeah, long time ago. But the scope of these injuries, I don't know what to make of it, because even today, Mike McDaniel basically said, would I be surprised that he does not practice and plays in a game? Not really. And, that was the nature of where he was all of last season. And I got to admit, I thought he practiced at least once a week. Like, for you to play at that level without any practice, man, that's pretty impressive. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, no, and I did the research. I went through every single injury report last year, and the number.
You would.
Yes, I would.
you absolutely would. That people got to realize who you are. That is who Poupart is.
Anyway, so I documented all that in my alldolphins.com story, which I encourage everyone to read. I actually kind of like it myself, if I do say so. Before we go back to Armstead, if we're going to go back to Armstead, here's the rest of the rest of the list. The only other player who did not participate in practice was defensive back Elijah Campbell with the knee. 3 players were listed as limited, including Jaylen Waddle, and now we know the injury is to his oblique. Also limited were Justin Bethel with a knee. Back at practice for the first time since he suffered that knee injury, making an interception late in the second joint practice against the Falcons. And then the other one is rookie tight end Julian Hill, who's got an ankle issue. 6 players listed as full participants. Devon Achane shoulder, Savon Ahmed back, Raekwon Davis elbow, Liam Eichenberg ribs. We knew Eichenberg was dealing with something. Brandon Jones knee. He's coming back from the ACL injury, so that's logical. He will be getting treatment on there. And the last one is Connor Williams' knee. And then the flip side is the Chargers have only 2 guys on their injury list. One of whom is their rookie 3rd-round pick linebacker by the name of Dayan Henley. And then an outside linebacker, Chris Rump II, who was limited. Henley did not practice. That's quite the list. And then again, because I did the research, at this time last year, the Dolphins had 8 players on their injury report, the first one of the year, because of injury. This year they have 11. Which actually is a fairly high number and I looked around the league, and sometimes I see, like, for example, Detroit has 1 guy on their injury list. That's it.
It's a high number. Hopefully it evens out at the end of the season. There are 2 things that stand out about the injury report to me that was revealed. One, the rib injuries for Liam Eichenberg. We got to a point, I think both of us, where we realized how bad he's playing can't be just all absolute confidence loss. Like, there has to be something there, because he got to the point where he was just being dominated in one-on-ones every single period. And so a rib injury makes some sense. Now, the question is, can he play with a rib injury and play at a high level with the rib injury? My argument would be no. So more than likely, based on my just computations, He's probably 4 weeks at the end of this week into this rib injury, which means maybe it properly fully heals in another 3 weeks. And I'm adding an extra week. I did stay at a Holiday Inn on our last trip. I'm adding an extra week just because of all the activity that he's doing. They shut him down for, I believe, close to 2 weeks, but then ramped him back up. Broken bones take 6 weeks to heal. That's
well. Now we're going broken ribs. Whoa, okay.
No, I'm not. It could be a rib bruise. It could be a rib bruise. I mean, but
by the way,
they're not going to cast if you have a hairline fracture on your ribs, they're not casting it. So
no. Correct. I know. I understand that. And this is the part where if anybody out there is going like, why do you keep speculating on all that? And well, because the Dolphins are not going to tell us exactly the nature of the injury. They're not even going to tell us who's starting at left guard because Mike McDaniel was asked that question again today. Actually, it was a two-part question that from Barry that started with, is Terron Armstead going to be available and who's your starting left guard? And he basically went a long time on Terron Armstead, never answered the left guard question, and props to David.
Yes, he did. He said, I'm not going to answer your question. Yeah.
Sorry, you didn't answer the left guard question until Furones came back, and props to him, and literally said, you didn't answer the left guard question.
He did answer the question. He said, I'm not telling you.
Well, that's not answering the question.
I mean, that is answering the question. He's not telling you. And then he repeated it for Furones, I'm not telling you, because it would really put me at a competitive disadvantage. And we argued that.
But would it really?
It would. And I argued that with Chris Perkins inside the media room, because I can honestly tell you, my game plan and strategy would be completely different with Isaiah Wynn versus Liam Eichenberg. And no matter who you put there, that's the weak link of your offensive line. I'm going after it. So, but
time out. You just said whoever you put in there, that's your weak link. So therefore,
but it would impact my game plan, because if it was Liam Eichenberg, I'm really going after it. I'm going after it like every snap, going after it. Like, with Isaiah Wynn, I'm like, I might test it a little bit, but it's not going to be my whole game plan. Liam Eichenberg, like, it's going to be my whole game plan. So, and I don't think this battle is over. And I personally believe that this is Isaiah Wynn's job that he inherited, not won. And how you perform in the first 2-3 weeks of the season will determine and dictate whether or not you keep it, because Robert Jones is coming back. Lester Cotton is there. Me and you both believe, based on what we saw in the Houston game and the week that followed before his injury, Lester Cotton was saying, hey, guys, I would like that job. And then you've got a healed up Liam, which I don't know what to think about that. I think he's personally going to be the backup center.
Yeah, and just going back to this whole idea of competitive advantage.
You don't buy it.
No, I don't buy that Brandon Staley is basing his defensive game plan on whether it's Liam Eichenberg or Isaiah Wynn. And, now if you're telling me if Jaylen Waddle was a question mark, now does he do something different if it's only Tyreek and no Jaylen Waddle as opposed to both of them in there? Yeah, that one maybe I could.
I'm talking about pass rush game plan, though. I
understand that. I'm just saying that we're not dealing with necessarily frontline players. No offense to either player, with necessarily frontline players.
But this is an important conversation here, because it's not just frontline players that you have to guard against from a defensive standpoint and game plan for. You've also got to attack the weak links. I mean, if you're a good coach, you're identifying where are there, and I've heard Mike McDaniel and Vic Fangio say this, like, we want to put our best against their worst and basically create a pressure point. And if I'm pontificating as a opposing defensive coordinator on what is the pressure point that I want to attack for the Miami Dolphins, particularly when it comes to pass rushing, I'm blitzing, forcing their linebackers to either stay in or block, which according to you, the history of staying in is very slim. So that means Tua's going to have a whole lot of pressure in his face. And Liam Eichenberg or Isaiah Wynn would be my pressure point that I'm going after. I'm not attacking Robert Hunt or, I'm not trying to, even to, and the left side, because maybe Isaiah Wynn is starting. So the left side is going to be under heavy attack.
And
so
maybe
that's my game plan.
And maybe Kendall Lamb is starting. We have to make room for that possibility. Because I go back to Terron Armstead's appearance on Good Morning Football last week when they asked him about the season opener, and he's like, my goal is to be ready for week one. You've been around long enough. Generally speaking, guys will
playing week one.
I'm playing week one. Yeah, exactly. When he says my goal is ready to be for week one, to me, that was major red flag right there. That oh boy. And then if you recall, the Chargers edge defenders, edge pass rushers are Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. And mind you, they didn't have Joey Bosa when the Dolphins played at SoFi Stadium last year. Nor did they have Derwin James in the secondary. So that could be problematic. Waddle.
The second thing right. You didn't let me, is that Brandon Jones is still getting treatment for the knee. Remember when Mike McDaniel said it wasn't the knee, it's something that's connected or associated with the knee, but not the knee. Okay, so my thought is that maybe, and the fact that he's a full participant, maybe that issue, whether it was a hamstring or a quad that was compensating for the knee, which oftentimes happens. Yeah. Remember, I stayed at a Holiday Inn. Or maybe he's compensating with the other leg for the existing knee. That happens so often. People don't realize how much your body overcompensates for whatever is ailing. Now, the question is, full participant all week, do you play Brandon Jones?
Absolutely.
And really? This is an absolutely certainty on your end?
Yeah, that kind of absolutely, yeah. And again, keep in mind, players have to be listed on the injury report if they're getting treatment. I mean, are we that surprised that he would be getting treatment?
No, absolutely.
Okay, so again,
Brandon Jones should be getting treatment for the next 3 months on that knee.
So, and we don't get to see what they're actually doing other than stretching and individuals. So we don't know exactly how much he's taking part, in the meat of practice. So to me, if all we see him is full the whole week, that indicates to me that if he's limited, that's a different story.
Hold on here.
So, for example, if I see Waddle limited the whole week with an oblique injury, that's a little troublesome because an oblique for a wide receiver, is problematic.
What's an oblique again?
The oblique is like right here, the side.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's an issue. Of course. And by the way, if I'm off, I believe that's around the area here. I'm sure there'll be somebody quick to point out that it's around this area here. So that to me would be problematic because if he catches the ball, chances are he's going to get tackled.
And he's going to raise his hands. I'm not too worried about Jaylen Waddle. What I am worried about, and you didn't let me finish this, throwing in that little Jaylen Waddle curveball.
How rude of me! I apologize. Go ahead.
I'm not sure that I'm starting Brandon Jones versus Justin Herbert as Javon Holland, a 70% Brandon Jones coming off a knee injury. Maybe I try it. I mean, we should know based on what you see in practice. So I'm pretty sure Skylar Thompson's job is to air it out in practice this week, just if he's simulating Justin Herbert for the first team defense. And so they'll know, but I don't feel confident that that's the right approach to go, especially from a standpoint of, hey, Brandon Jones brings a lot of things to the table. Coverage is not a strong point.
But he can blitz.
Okay, that's cute.
You want to throw some blitzes at Justin Herbert, or are you going to go with, because this is another factor, the Dolphins last year played the Chargers without their two starting tackles, Rashawn Slater, who's very, very good. Trey Pipkins on the right side is serviceable. Rashawn Slater is very, very good. So if Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips can't win those one-on-one matchups against those guys, Dolphins may not have a choice but to bring in some blitzers And this where Brandon Jones factors. I'm not necessarily saying starting him, but I'm saying certainly getting in some snaps. And no, it's not every time he's on the field he's going to blitz, because then it becomes a Mike Gesicki syndrome. Who, by the way, I should point out, since I actually wrote a story, there was a concern that he might not be there for week 2 because he had a shoulder injury. He's not even on the Patriots injury report. But old friend Devontae Parker is, and cue Devontae Parker jokes. He was limited with a knee injury. And I mentioned him just because he's a former Dolphin player. So anyway, going back to this, I could absolutely see Brandon Jones getting snaps, but I agree with you that maybe it'll be Verone McKinley, the third, starting opposite Javon Holland. It still could be Deshaun Elliott. Maybe the Dolphins want some combination of some coverage and some big hitting ability. And I'm sure if we ask McDaniel on Friday, he'll tell us exactly who's starting. I cracked myself up. No, he wouldn't tell us. Spoiler alert.
It'll be interesting to see what approach that they take. I'm very fascinated by that spot. That position battle has probably not been clarified at all. Whereas we know what's going on at left guard. That safety spot opposite Javon Holland, mystery meat over there. So that's interesting. I did also find Salvon Ahmed, the back. That's a little, hey, a little interesting. And I say that because he's the one player that I believe has earned the opportunity to prove that he can be a platoon player and step up and fill that Jeff Wilson role.
Okay.
Based on what he did, as we argue, and you still have not found, I do not know a Dolphin who's had a better running preseason than Salvon Ahmed.
Stop looking. I'm giving you that one. I've stopped looking.
Yeah. So, I mean, you do that, you earn playing time in game 1. And, and I know all Dolphin fans are absolutely in love with Devon Achane. I think he's probably the 4th back in this whole situation and dynamic, just because you need Chris Brooks, who's changed his number to 35. Not a real great number, but hey, do you, rookie? I'm sure you got what you could get.
Oh, I'm sure Apple was like, listen, Rook, you changed 33. I got 33.
Yeah, okay. But Chris Brooks is who gets the tough yardage right now? Who's going to get a 3rd and 2? Sure. Well, if you look at that backfield, Chris Brooks is the guy with his hand raised. And so I think he's going to be a little bit higher up on the depth chart. And either Salvon Ahmed or Devon Achane, they flip-flop. And I think Salvon has more special teams jobs and roles. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
No, I agree.
My point is, I hope Dolphin fans are not disappointed if Devon Achane isn't activated for his very first NFL game.
Yeah, because they wouldn't be unheard of to go with 3 tailbacks. That's not an unusually low number to go into a game. And since you mentioned Chris Brooks and we spoke about Skylar earlier, let's do a little clerical work here. Skylar Thompson is now number 6 from number 19. And do you remember the last quarterback to wear 6 in a Dolphin regular season game?
It would have to be Mr. I Don't Care.
Don't care. Very good, Jay Cutler. So Chris Brooks went from 30.
We call him I Don't Care because he really didn't care.
There's a famous story about him that I don't remember the specifics, but he was dealing with a fan who was giving him a hard time, and his reply was basically like, "Don't care."
Yeah, don't care.
So Chris Brooks went from 33 to 35. Kelvin Joseph, who was 35, took over the number of the player for whom he was traded. That's interesting. Noah Benogany, so he's now going to be number 9. And then Tyler Croft went from 48, which he could have worn as a tight end, to now number 82. I don't know the affinity there because he's never worn 82. He wore 81 at his previous NFL stops. So Skylar Brooks, Frazier, Croft. Oh, and Parry Nickerson went from 49 to 34. So now you're all caught up on that bit of clerical work. Also Wednesday, which is Tua Tagovailoa press conference day. Anything about what he said stand out to you besides the fact that he would love to play 17 games? Like, no duh.
I think the way that he answered emphatically, like that is absolutely a goal of mine, which is not really a surprise. Everybody would love to play.
I know, correct. That's
Yeah, but it was a little bit too, yeah, and I'm overly, I love the fact that Tua is extremely honest and
Yeah.
candid, and love it, love it, love it. But he shows his hand a little bit, and props to him because he has literally done everything possible to ensure that he plays 17 games. And it's out of his hand, it's out of his control. But the one thing I will say that that did catch my attention, and I asked a question, so obviously it caught my attention, was Tua was giving me pretty much a lecture today. And a much needed lecture because I've covered the Dolphins for 15 years.
Oh,
I'm beaten down on by low expectations. And, and I know I'm not the only one because Dave Hyde heard it and asked about it. And Chris Perkins wrote a column about it when Tua was saying Super Bowl last year during their great run. Tua was talking Super Bowl. And this is the one thing that I'm very interested and intrigued by. When did the thought process change? Because in previous years, Dolphins weren't saying Super Bowl. They weren't talking about it. I know the fan song says, if you're talking about the Miami Dolphins, you're talking Super Bowl because they're
but when before last year were they 8-3 after 11 games? I mean, that was part of it. I mean, they had reason to talk Super Bowl when they were 8-3 and they were rolling up teams all over the place.
But even when everybody's record was 0-0, you never heard you'd hear them say, "Yeah, we're pushing for the AFC Championship." You never hear the word Super Bowl out of anybody on that team.
I mean, do you hear
and you hear it very often around Miami Gardens now. But, and yeah, Tua's like, if you're gonna believe it, you gotta speak it, you gotta say it, you gotta talk about it, and you can't just hide it back in the deep. It's not gonna become a reality for you, and then that's kind of some mind mojo stuff that these motivational talkers do, and I do see that kind of future for Tua because he really inspired me there. If you want to, so I'm gonna tell you right now, this All Dolphins podcast is gonna have 10,000 subscribers.
There you go.
I am going to speak it into this. That's the baby steps, and then we're going to go to 20,000 subscribers, and then we're going to average. Anyway, let me stop. But it's you got to speak it if you want it, and as uncomfortable as it makes me, and yes, the record is 0-0. This Dolphins team is talking about Super Bowl. And they're talking as if we will be there. We will.
Whoa. Are they talking like they will be there? They're talking like it's on the table and it's not.
It's on the table. Like we have all we need. And some of us might disagree. I'm one of them. But they're like, we got everything we need. We're good.
Okay, I'm playing glass half full here. To me, look around the NFL. I would say, and then I've gone through this exercise. I think it's 10 or 11 teams in the AFC that are easily, to me, are playoff caliber. Well, if you're playoff caliber, you go on a run, you can win the Super Bowl. And then in the NFC, which, to be polite, kind of sucks.
Eagles, Dallas,
San Francisco. But Dallas is overblown every single year. It's so annoying. But okay. Who else? I hear a lot of Seattle.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Seattle can't even beat 6 teams in the AFC.
No, correct. So let's give them like a mystery team, whatever. So 11-4, 15 teams to me can talk Super Bowl without being ridiculous. Like, for example, if the Las Vegas Raiders, no offense, start talking Super Bowl, like seriously, really, or the Colts start talking Super Bowl, people, be real. I think the Dolphins absolutely have the right to think of themselves as a team that, if things go right, absolutely can win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be more comfortable if you actually won a playoff game first.
Sure.
Yeah, for the first time in 2 decades.
Or reach the AFC Championship game for the first time in exactly 30 years. That would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. Hey, I hear where Tua's coming from. I am that I get it. I'm the negative Nelly. I'm the glass half empty. I get who I am. But I'm like reconsidering changing my mindset here. We're going to speak things into existence. And they totally believe, they truly do believe that they got it. They got what it takes. And it's very interesting to see how this dynamic plays out.
Yeah, but again, what they can fall back on is we were 8-3 last year. At one point, everything was rolling.
And then you bottomed out.
Then it went south, but who's to say we can't recapture that? And then we made significant.
Yeah. Hold on. Who's to say that we can't recapture that? Hold on. Time out. You're right. You can recapture 8-3. But did you ever fix the 5-game losing streak? Did you ever fix that? Or did it just expire?
But again, this is me talking
them. Yes.
For them. This is what they're seeing. Okay. This is where I don't think there are some people who suggest, well, they were 9-8 last year with their QB hurt for 4 games. They added Vic Fangio, they added Jalen Ramsey. Therefore, you do the math. They're in the playoffs. They're going to have a better record. It doesn't work like that. But what I am saying is the potential absolutely is there. And I'm going to repeat it again. The Dolphins, to me, are in that group of about 11. And let me amend something. When I said, to me, the teams that are the biggest locks to make the playoffs are Kansas City and Jacksonville. And Jacksonville is a result as much of anything else as a division they play in. I can't see anybody beating them for that division title. And Kansas City is because it's Kansas City.
Put some respect on Ryan Tannehill's name, young man.
Like I said, Jacksonville. I mean, okay. Even the Bengals were a tremendous team. That division is a bear. I mean, holy crap!
I can see Baltimore winning it. I really do. I can.
You can or cannot?
Can.
Oh, absolutely. And I can see. I think Cleveland's gonna surprise people. And then Pittsburgh. Fun fact: Mike Tomlin's never had a losing record. And last year his quarterbacks were Mitch Trubisky and then Kenny Pickett coming in as a rookie in game 4, and they finished 9-8. And when we saw him in that Sunday night in October, it looked like crap. It looked like a solid defense with injuries and a really dysfunctional offense, and they finished 9-8. I mean, and now this year they've looked like insanely good in the preseason, and I don't want to put too much stock in the preseason, but if you don't think Pittsburgh is going to be a factor, I think you're crazy. So the Dolphins, so I got 2 teams that are, to me, are semi-locks in the AFC to make the playoffs, a whole bunch of teams that could go anywhere from out of the playoffs to making a run at the Super Bowl, and the Dolphins are in that mix. Mm-hmm. And to me, going back to Tua, maybe the most interesting thing of the press conference is when somebody asked him to compare, or not compare, but if he's keeping an eye on Justin Herbert and then the whole thing like that. And it was very cool that he was talking about, like, I see certain things that he does, certain throws he makes, and he becomes almost a fanboy, but they're different styles, and they are. I mean, it was cool of him to, like, say that it was actually more revealing than he's been in the past, where it's like, I'm focused on my team, he's on this team and all that. I wish him nothing but success. This was actually interesting what he was saying. And yes, they're completely different quarterbacks, and he can be as effective as Herbert in a completely different way.
Absolutely. Just because you don't have a cannon, that's like comparing, not really Josh Allen, because I don't think Herbert is Josh Allen, but that's like comparing Josh Allen to Drew Brees. You can like one style, and I respect. What's real important to me from a quarterback standpoint, and I got this from a head coach. It's been so long that I cannot even remember which head coach it was. I honestly, and this is something that I'm only going to share on alldolphins.com. A head coach once gave me a list of 10 requirements that a quarterback should have. And this was back in the 2012 year where all the elite quarterbacks were coming out. And I believe that coach was Mike Shanahan. I'm not 1,000% sure, but I believe it was Mike Shanahan. But it was somebody off Mike Shanahan's tree. I do know that. And the number one trait that he said a quarterback needs, this is number one, is accuracy. Accuracy. And to me, that's where Tua sets himself apart. I watched some passes today in practice in the portions that we were able to watch. And I'm not going to reveal what they were working on, but you could tell it was specifically catered to the Chargers. And like he's throwing the passes to spots before his receivers even broke. And the receivers are catching them in full stride, like boom, and keep running. Not wait for it, not like turn around. It was just croom, croom, croom. And I'm thinking to myself, like, man, this guy is really, really, yeah, it's hard. It's easier to do it when there's no rush in front of you and no offensive line there. I know all that. But let's not pretend, my favorite term.
There you go, yes.
Yeah, let's not pretend that we could watch Ryan Tannehill throw the ball without any protection. This guy had a phenomenal arm, and receivers to be sitting there like, all right, ball's finally here. Like, because it wasn't, but like you didn't see receivers catching Tannehill's balls in stride.
I mean, is that our point of comparison, though? I mean, and this is where you get a little more overwhelming and full of admiration, a little bit more than I do. I have said all along, and you're a witness of this, he's got elite accuracy in the short to intermediate range.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Deep two. You'll say it. Deep two. No. I said deep two. Deep two.
Sorry, but
deep
no.
Two.
Sorry, but no.
You're going to say it.
And yes, he can complete deep passes before somebody starts going, yeah, but he completed deep pass last year. Yes, we get that. Yes. Again, but it's about consistency. And that's where he's got to make his money with the accuracy. And again, also with the quick release, getting the ball out. There are certain throws he will not make as well or as consistently as other quarterbacks in the NFL. That's just a fact. There are certain throws Justin Herbert will make, as Tua acknowledged, that he can't make, or Josh Allen.
Absolutely.
He does not have that kind of arm, and that's just a fact of life. But again, if the offense around him operates the way it can, and he's able to get the ball out quickly, there's no reason that the offense can't be high functioning.
Number one offense in the NFL. No reason.
Okay, we'll see. Also got to do it through 17 weeks, not just 11 like last year. Because when again we got to December, it went south, and that's something the Dolphin offense absolutely has to prove before the Super Bowl talk can become legitimate. Because
which is my next column coming out this week.
Okay, so excellent on alldolphins.com.
Yeah, you're teasing it, yet you don't want me to write it. Like, I listen.
Well, I want you to. Like,
they didn't answer a single. They didn't answer a single question in December. They didn't solve anything. Now the question is, have they solved stuff within the last 9 months?
And that's the big question. And that's why not everybody has them. If you look at a lot of the predictions around nationally, not everybody has them even penciled them for the playoffs. This is why I don't think they're a slam dunk. There's a wide range of possibilities from, missing the playoffs or even going to the Super Bowl if everything goes right. Speaking of everything goes right, everything went right on this podcast. It was beautiful. And it was so good. We're going to do it again. In the meantime, like, share, subscribe, tell a friend. Fans First Sports Network under Miami Dolphins Insider. He is Omar and Poupart. Thanks for watching.